Welcome to the Excel Podcast. I am your host, Teresa, creating a space for real conversations, growth, and inspiration, one deep breath at a time. Viewer and listener discretion is advised. This episode contains discussion of sensitive topics that may be distressing for some audiences. Please take care while listening, and if these topics are triggering for you, we encourage you to prioritize your well-being. I did want to start off with basically talking about who you are. You can state your name and where you're from, just to get to know you a little bit better and the audience to get to know you a little bit better.
Well, my name is Stephanie. I was born in Long Beach, but then moved to Moreno Valley probably around 10, almost 11. And Long Beach is still my hometown. I still love it. And I visit a lot, but recently I've made Moreno Valley more so like feels like my home. Um, just because I know a lot of people in the community. I've worked here so long that I know most of the people in this city. But really all I do most of my days is work and go to church and see people that I'm building relationships with here and trying to almost like help grow the young adult age people in my community just because I've seen such a huge amount of people that are dealing with anxiety, mental illness, a lot of things lately, and I feel like it's getting worse as time like goes on. So that's been pretty much what I stay connected to with my time.
No, definitely. I appreciate that because I'm into that and I study psychology. So I try to help people. That's why I started this podcast and why I wanted to help others with feeling alone or feeling that anxiety of not knowing to do and, having a hard time to grow. So I really appreciate that. What does growth mean to you, really?
I think actively making the choice to step towards getting better. And I know it's really hard. So even the small steps do matter. Like, I remember being at a point where I was so anxious, I wouldn't even go outside. I wouldn't want to go outside. It didn't matter what it was for. It didn't matter if I was going for a walk, getting groceries, anything. Like, I couldn't push past how I felt in the moment. So one thing that I like really benefited from in therapy was being able to acknowledge like even a super small step matters. You just have to keep being willing to make those active choices daily. They don't have to be huge milestones, but being able to want to do that for yourself.
And those things, it has to come out of you because I feel like a lot of people, there's people that want to help those people that need help, but they
Mhm.
have to actually want it because at the end of the day, you can't force someone to do something, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely, I agree with that. So I definitely like that meaning of or I guess definition of growth. I guess what inspired you to even to join the podcast? Like why would you want to share your story?
I think fear controls a lot of my decisions and it always has growing up. So I think just wanting to be like, okay, you know what? I'm going to stop being fearful because ultimately everybody has a story, everybody has a testimony. So why not be willing to share it with people? If it'll help even just one person, that's enough, you know? Like that's my whole, the way I've been viewing being able to talk about what I went through is okay, if I talk about this, maybe it will help even just one person. And that will mean everything, you know?
I feel like a lot of people have a hard time with opening up and sharing this
Mhm.
intimate story just because it's so personal. But I really appreciate you gaining the courage to want to talk about it. And especially being on the other side of the world, I think it's something really inspiring to me just because, you are wanting to be out there. Like people here in Georgia are going to be watching it, you know? So I think it's really cool. And I did want to start with because I know that you also with your story, um, you also had your spiritual growth in it as well. When did your spiritual growth actually start?
Honestly, I would say I was probably 21 is when I was at the time dating someone who his dad was a pastor, and slowly but surely I saw what his character was like, and I had never seen that growing up. I wasn't really around people that were in tune with their relationship with God, like actually investing into it, reading the Bible, understanding what it says, and through his character too, I was like, okay, this man is onto something, like there's just something about him and the joy that he just embodies. And
Yeah.
I got curious, and then that curiosity is what led to ultimately me deciding, okay, let me just try and read the Bible and try to understand it and see what I think, like what my interpretation is. Obviously, I think there's what it says and you receive it, and there's an actual interpretation, but then everybody's life is different. It hits people differently.
Yeah, that's so true. For me, it had to do with something traumatic to be able to get to that point, to be able to be like, okay, let me see what God is about, because people will be talking about God and I don't know why. Um, so that's why that got me into it. So that's really cool that somebody else actually got you into it, because I feel like that's the story sometimes, well, with most people, is that somebody tells them about God and about the Bible, and to get
Mhm.
into it, and then you get curious, and then you want to do your own research on your own. So I think that's
Yeah.
really cool. What's the specific moment where you felt like this is it, this is where I want to be, like I want to be close to God?
I think my trauma and the things that I went through it just made me hate God, honestly. Um, and it made me super bitter. And I remember it just getting to a point where I couldn't handle the anger and the depression and feeling so upset about everything that happened in my life and the hard moments where like everybody says like if God is good, why do these things happen? And it eventually got to the point where I believed the good in the Bible more than feeling the pain of everything that happened before, because that was just my life. I couldn't have changed it, and we have free will. And I learned like, okay, ultimately everybody has free will. We do with it what we want. And I have the opportunity to look at what I know is good in the Bible and receive it. And that's a choice. Like I can be angry the rest of my life or I can receive it. And I want to say I was probably 25 when that finally, like, after talking to people in the church, talking to leaders, talking to people that were trained in therapy, but it was biblical, finally understanding that really helped me genuinely like commit to walking with the Lord.
Wow, that's awesome. So it's something like that you do now, that is like a habit that you do. It could be praying, it could be reading the Bible. Like, what is it that you do as a habit?
I do all of it. Like I'll read, I'll pray, but I think the most that I do that really connects me and it becomes a habit is singing. So I've been practicing singing and playing the guitar, and that's probably the closest I ever feel to God, because I think everybody worships differently. Some people pray more, some people can memorize every single verse, but there's just something that I feel when I know I'm singing about God to him and really putting him like on the pedestal, like he comes first. He's the priority. Then everything else will follow.
I think for me, that's something that I find, I don't know, whenever I go to church and I hear like them worshiping and them singing like these songs, those are the moments where it touches me the most. Those are where I'm like bawling, I'm crying, I'm on the floor. Like that's what happens to me when I hear people singing and worshiping. I agree with you because I feel the same way. I guess, have you ever thought of like joining a church and like singing and then worshiping and getting into that?
Yes, I go to Sandals now here in Myrna Valley, and everybody's been pushing me to join since like the first weekend that I went, um, in July, last year in July. So I'm praying about auditioning, but I think again, just working through fear and anxiety to be able to be on a stage and look at a lot of people um in the audience, like ultimately I think there's still a lot of growth that I'm working in my healing. So I've been pushing it to the side, but I do know that that's a goal that I want to do is audition, probably not play the guitar when I audition, but be able to sing and know, okay, this is where God wants to use me.
Yeah, that'd be really nice because if you do that, I will admire you because I've always wanted to do that. Like it's always been in the back of my head because I like to sing too. So I've always wanted to do, to join the worship group and then like singing in front of people, but I also get scared. Um, but yeah, so if you do that, I will admire you. Please just keep.
Let it encourage you. Let it encourage you to take a step towards trying to do that.
True, that is true. I might do it. I'm thinking about it. It's been in the back of my head, but I haven't really pushed to it. I haven't even like tried to do it, but it's something that's been in the back of my head. So I really just keep praying and just hope for the best and you do well in that audition because I think you can do it. I think you have a lot of passion in you, and I've seen your singing videos and they're super cute, and you can sing. So I'm like, you have to make it. There's no way you can't.
Yeah. That's like my small step. It's like, okay, let me post a video on Instagram, and then that's at least one step of putting myself for people to see it, you know? And I remember telling the worship leader at the church, like, hey, can you look at my Instagram videos before I audition just to tell me like if I shouldn't audition? And he was cracking up and he was like, Stephanie, I believe that you're supposed to do it. And I was like, no, but can you check first?
Just to make sure. I don't want to audition and embarrass myself now.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I know that you mentioned like fear, like it and anxiety. Has there ever been a moment where it started or was it always like that?
I think I can remember being really young and being anxious
Mhm.
and fearful. I want to say I was about 9, probably. I
Yeah.
started understanding what it was to be anxious
Yeah.
at a very young age and being fearful. Once I understood, I think the root of it was like not understanding that the abuse that I was going through was wrong. So once I understood it, then it was like, okay, it instantly impacted my way of thinking from that age. Honestly, up until now, 9, started at 9, and I'm 31 and I'm fearful and anxious, but I had to take like active choices every day. Like, okay, I'm not gonna try and be fearful. I'm gonna go a different way.
Right. Right. And have you ever like had moments where you couldn't like control it? It just took over you?
Yeah, I want to say I was 8, no, 17.
Mhm.
I was 17 and probably just turned 17. And again, I was so angry at God. I didn't understand what was happening. And it's that idea of these things keep happening, they're horrible. Why does it keep happening if they're supposedly a good God?
Yeah.
And that anger, the fear, the anxiety definitely led me to a point where I was like, okay, I'm just gonna try to pop a lot of pills and see what happens. And genuinely, that's what I thought at that time. I was 17. I didn't know what it would do to my body, um, what it would do to me, and
Mhm.
in the future. But I remember being fine and being okay. Like I felt nauseous, but the next day I was fine. And it hit me like, okay, obviously, as much as I don't want to be here, I'm supposed to be here, and I have to see why. I have to find out why.
I've had those moments too where it just takes over and you don't know at that moment that you're doing wrong. And so, definitely, it's understandable if you go to something to try to help the fear or the anxiety, trying to get rid of it. Obviously, it's sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it's not the right thing to do. Um,
Mhm.
but definitely, I mean, I've been in your shoes and I've done that. So a lot of people don't open up with these things because it's so personal, and then it's something that I guess you could feel guilty for. Was there a moment where you finally like were like, okay, I can control this. Like this is not gonna control me anymore. Like I got it from here.
I think I was doing okay between 25 to when I got that biblical counseling up until last year.
Mm-hmm.
And then so many things happened that were out of my control. And I really had to like get into an IOP program, stick to the therapy, do it I was in therapy every single day. And it helped me really get a grip on being able to make my own decisions, standing firm on them,
Mm-hmm.
and not feeling guilty for the choices that I made for myself. So I would say last year, probably around May, is when I finished therapy.
Wow. So it was recent. It was recent whenever.
Yes, because I was okay for a while,
Mm-hmm.
but until all these things happened this last year,
Yeah.
it just like blew everything up. And mentally, I was in a place where I was like, yeah, I need to get into a program. I need people to help me because it's too much for me mentally. And I knew it at the time, like, okay, I can't do it alone.
If you are okay with opening up, what is it that you went through this past year that kind of gained you the courage to control, your mental health?
Um, I had such a huge decision to make. Like, I knew that my boyfriend at the time was going to propose, and I decided to move probably about 3.5 weeks before we planned to have a ceremony.
Yeah.
And at the time, I knew, like, okay, I don't want to live there unless maybe he goes somewhere else. Like, I don't want to live together. And that didn't happen. And as much as I encouraged it to happen, it wouldn't. And I was like, okay, I'm not going back to Moreno Valley. And I decided to stay. And I think that's where I feel I messed up is making the choice I didn't agree with for myself, but staying for another person, putting my happiness to the side for another person.
Mhm.
And through that time, I moved the end of December. Through that time, I experienced horrible anxiety. I didn't really go anywhere. Um, my ex-fiance was he had so many things that knew he needed help in mentally, and he just wasn't taking the steps to do it. And because I kept making the choice to help when he wasn't ready, and I stayed, it just progressed in a horrible way. And it led to him being put on a 5250, and he got placed in a mental facility for probably like a week and a half. Um, I had seen him hurt himself, and that's ultimately why I got in the IOP because I couldn't forget what had happened. I kept remembering the day that he had hurt himself when we took him to the like emergency room, and it was the toughest experience of my life. Like I wanted to, at that point when I found out that he was talking to someone else, like I wanted to leave. I wanted to leave the apartment. I wanted to go. And because he couldn't deal with that choice, he hurt himself. And it was a very difficult time because I was worried about this person and their physical well-being, their mental well-being, while trying to heal from what had happened and make a choice for myself in the future. And I knew I needed help with myself so I can make the choice that truly what God wanted for me, because God didn't want me to be in a relationship where I'm cheated on, where I'm getting hit, where I'm getting hurt, where I ended up in the hospital with a concussion. Like, and a lot of people that deal with domestic violence, it's like they care for their partner, they want to help, and sometimes you choose to leave way later than you should, and it's tough because you do it almost out of care. Like you want to help this person, but ultimately it's not safe for you. And then my whole like therapy, they were just trying to get me to be able to find another place to live, go somewhere else. Like, yes, both of your names are on the lease, but ultimately you guys cannot see each other. Like, it's not safe. So I really had to figure out how do I deal with this financial burden, with this experience that I cannot forget, and mentally being able to move move on because I knew this is not for me. God doesn't want this for me. This is not healthy. And I don't want it for myself anymore either. Like this is not what I want.
It's crazy because I would have never thought you would go through something like that because you seemed like a very like upbeat person. You seem very positive. You seem very happy. And to even know that you went through something like that, it hurts because like a lot of people, I feel like what I've seen before and in my experience, you kind of put on a face for other people. Like you pretend to be happy, you pretend to be this happy person, you put on a smile, and you go about your day, but inside you're like burning. It's just it's a lot going on inside and mentally, and so and it makes me sad because a lot of people do have to go through that or do have to do that where they have to like pretend that they're okay, but inside they're not doing well. So it's really sad that you had to go through those things and have to suffer with your mental health because it's not fair, especially with being such a good person. It's not fair that you have to go through those things. You did mention like your past relationship with your ex fiance. Um, when did that start? When did the relationship start, and how did it like progress to this point or to the point that you are now?
I want to say we didn't date for very long, and that's the problem. It's like when you don't invest into really getting to know someone's character,
Mhm.
sometimes it can be very different as time goes on. And overall, I want to say it was a whole like year of from when I had started dating him to the point to where I decided to leave. And I think I truly didn't get to like fully heal until I could leave the apartment because then it was a whole different type of being able to work through the emotions and the mental battles that I was going through at the time.
So, did the whole, because I know that you mentioned domestic violence, did that start in the very beginning, or did it start in the middle, or when did it start in the relationship?
Once I got out there, probably like the beginning of January is when, to my knowledge, he never would drink anymore. And when I moved out there in January, unfortunately, he started like drinking. And whether it was stress because of work or frustrations about things that had happened prior to me moving out there, like alcohol do not mix and it does not help us make good decisions, I feel like, when we are super intoxicated. And we don't get to think in our right mind. That's definitely when a lot of the fear and anxiety kicked in because he had never been angry, like to the point where something like that would happen. And from then on, it just progressively got way worse.
When it started, did you think it was going to be an ongoing thing, or you were like, okay, maybe um, it's just going to be this one time, or maybe it was just because he was drinking, or when is it when you were like, okay, yeah, this is going to be an ongoing thing?
I totally thought that first night that he came back, like really intoxicated, like, okay, he's just upset. Like maybe there's a lot going on that he hasn't talked to me about. And I remember like opening a safe space to be able to talk, like, hey, what happened? Because that wasn't normal. That's not what I'm used to. That's not what I've ever seen from you. And even through that conversation, like I could tell he was just really, really angry. And again, he was hanging out with coworkers and drank. And that led to more anger and more frustration, and he like hit the wall. It, I knew eventually, like by the end of January, like I think this is just something that he needs to work through. Like it's not okay to throw things or to hit the wall or to like intimidate someone because you're angry.
Mhm.
And I remember wanting to leave but not being able to. Like wanting to pack my stuff, but then eventually like feeling like, okay, how's he gonna do it alone? Maybe I should try to help. But that didn't last long. That lasted probably until the middle of March when I found out a lot more what was going on. That I was like, okay, this is not going to go well. Like, this is not for me. This is not, it doesn't seem to be getting better.
It's just, it sucks that a lot of people have to go through those things and not know when to leave. And then not know if it's okay to leave, and then like feeling trapped. And it's just those moments, it's not fun. And it sucks for the person in that type of position. Um, but when it was like the moment where, I guess the situation that you remember that kind of traumatized you or made you rethink everything? Like, when was it the moment where you felt that?
I think after I had seen him, like, I was, we were at the apartment. I had found out everything that happened
Mhm.
and he harmed himself. And seeing that, like, knowing where he was at as an individual, as God's child. Like this is something deeper that I don't know how to help with anymore. And I really had to be firm on that. Like, okay, there's no way for me to help you anymore. You either go so you can like, get help for yourself because like I can't do it for you, or I'm completely out of your life. Because at that time I had to decide, okay, I can stay at the apartment because my name's on it too. Like we can figure out a way where I stay there, you're at the facility getting help, or you go into rehab, do something. And I decided to wait, and that was like end of March. But when the therapy didn't help, and there was like all obvious signs of like, okay, nothing has helped, and there's no other like proof that he's pushing to help himself with other areas and resources that he can find. That moment of accepting, like, okay, this relationship can't be a relationship. Like I can be his friend. I could support as a as a human being that understands mental health and illness, like I had to actively like, okay, how can I support as a person but not be in this relationship because this is not where it's going. And it was really difficult. I remember him being so mad at my choices that he would just show up at the apartment and eventually I had to take his key and it still wouldn't stop. And once I ended up going to the hospital with a concussion, there was a moment where all I wanted to do was just like leave, get out, have my phone, and he had it. So I tried to grab it from him and I hit my head on the wall. I ended up with a really bad concussion and I knew like there is nothing I can do for you. You can't come here anymore. I will have to call the police. I have your family's numbers. I'll have them come pick you up. I don't know, do something, but as for being alone with you, it can't happen. Like it can't. I understand it's a tough situation. You may want to be here to heal in this space, but honestly, like it's not, we can't, like you can't, and I can't have it around me. And it was an eye opener. Like when I finally understood I can have love for this person, but I have to love myself enough to know what I deserve and what I need and what's good for me and what's safe for me too.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people kind of think if you love the person, you have to stay. And things like this where it's hurting you, I think you have to choose yourself. I think what you said is true. You can love the person, but you can love the person far away. There's these type of people where you can't love them. You can love them, but you can't love them being with them, because at times it's just it makes it worse, and then also you kind of ruin yourself in the same time. And I think you are always going to be with you at the end of the day. It's very inspiring that you found the step to be able to do that. And was there anything that really like anyone that really told you, or like did you just decide for yourself, or was there any like motive where you were just like, or someone told you something, or you read something, you were like, okay, maybe I should just choose myself, or was it just you?
I remember being in group therapy and there being like 8 different other people, and it was like a set of people that were all getting therapy together, and they were the most influential people at the time. Like the therapist, awesome, but to be able to hear from strangers I did not know and constant encouragement of like, this is not okay. Like, look at what's going on over time and it's not getting better. That helped tremendously, like more than I could have ever imagined. Like, I hope anyone in this situation finds a place where they can speak about what's going on and then be encouraged to make the choices that they need to for themselves.
So you think now you are way better than where you were but before in the relationship?
Definitely. I think it just made me a stronger person overall.
Mm.
Like, since even before I met this person, like, I think I'm 1,000 times stronger now. And I'm so grateful and blessed to be able to be safe. And I genuinely feel God's protection and favor on my life.
Yeah, that's true because I feel like a lot of people don't find the way out, and you did. And you were able to feel now you're in a safer place. You're not with that person anymore. Um, and I think that's God intended you to go through those things just so that you can get stronger. Maybe that's probably what it was. Because I believe that everything happens for a reason. God intended it to be for you, to be able to have that strength to probably help people. Now you're here telling your story, and other people are listening to you, and are going to learn from you and learn from your experience because they might be going through the same thing. So maybe that's your purpose, or better say, like, do you know your purpose in your life now?
And nowadays, a lot of people, it's all about media. Like people are telling you you should have a car, you should have a career, you should be married, you should have kids, like you should have all these things, and this is what success is. And it breaks my heart because I think everyone's purpose is just to be in a place where they are joyful, happy, and genuinely content with whatever their life looks like. And I firmly believe like the purpose that God has for me is to be used not even just like at church. Like I talk to people all the time that don't go to church. And I think his purpose is for me to be able to share who he's made me to be, what he wants for his people, and just to tell the truth about how much he loves me and what he's done in my life. Like everything else to me doesn't matter. Like what I have, what I don't have, it genuinely, to me in my mindset, like I could care less what career I end up in because ultimately I was made to do one thing, and that's to love God and love people the way that he does to the best of my ability. Like I'm not perfect. I will never be, but this experience has taught me a lot, and every bad experience has taught me so much. Like I have this love and joy that's indescribable because you wouldn't imagine my whole life and what I went through from childhood to now. My goal is to just be able to spread more joy because I think the whole world is lacking.
It's very admirable that you're able to get to that position now, with the struggles that you went through, because not a lot of people get to actually like learn from it and they don't really see the outcome of it. So I think it's really nice or really cool that you were able to get something positive from a traumatic situation that you've been through. Could be the situation, like, when you were younger, or any situation in your life. I think it's really awesome that you were able to turn it to a positive. And now you're just living your life. You're just happy. You're with God, you're enjoying your life here on earth, and I feel like that's what it should be. I feel like we shouldn't be worrying about what we have to do, or what it is that we need to be in the future, like, or where it is that we need to be in the future. I think it's important to just enjoy the moment and really just enjoy your life and be happy. Because if you keep worrying about other things, you're going to be miserable, because you're never going to, it really isn't the way you plan it to be. It's always going to be different. And I think that's really awesome that you got to that point. Now, if there's like one thing that you would tell someone that's going through the situation that you went through, either it could be with your mental health, or your spiritual, or even the domestic violence, what is something that you would tell them?
I think one thing I've learned in my life is no form of abuse is okay. It could be verbal, it can be physical, it can be sexual, it could be many things, but I think being in a position where I've experienced all of those things, I want to say none of that is okay. I'm sorry if it's happened to anyone, but none of it is ever okay and it should never be swept under the rug. I think the biggest step towards healing is understanding that it's not okay and wanting to actively make a choice to get better, to heal from anything that may have happened.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, because a lot of people don't know who to go to. So
Mhm.
hopefully that helps somebody. And another thing, or the last thing, what's a quote that you would give to someone, or anything that you basically tell yourself It can be a quote, it can be a Bible verse or something. What is something that you would give someone?
Have a Bible here because there was one that I wanted to share. That's so funny. Um, but there's a verse, Jeremiah 29:11, and it's for I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope.
I love
And I
that.
think that about sums it up. Like, I think God wants good things for us. It's not other people are going to keep making bad decisions sometimes, but all we can control is ourselves. And we can only try and accept that God does have good plans for us. It, it it's just a matter of being open to that and wanting to receive it too.
Thank you so much for being able to tell your story because, like I said before, not a lot of people have the courage to tell their story, and because of how personal it is. And I really appreciate you opening up and talking about your story and what you went through. And hopefully, it would help somebody else out there that's going through something that you went through. And hopefully, it would like kind of bring them or have a light in their head where they'll be like, okay, yes, I can get out, or yes, I don't have to live in this situation. So hopefully there is somebody out there that you were able to help. Yeah, that's it. I really appreciate you joining me on this podcast. Um, and yeah, I really hope that this helped you, not just other people, but this also helped you and being able to, I'm not being afraid about opening up.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I definitely want, if anyone is experiencing these things, there's definitely like resources from the city, the state, the county, um, that can help you. And that can be like housing, food, therapy. They will help you find shelter. So that's definitely one thing that I want. If anyone ever comes across anything similar to my story, I'd recommend leaving as soon as the first time you experience any type of altercation.
Yeah. Definitely, I feel like that's something that's very important to know because a lot of people will be like, okay, well, where do I go? Or who do I
Mhm.
go to? Or is there any
Mhm.
resources where I can like find help? A lot of people don't know about that, so I really appreciate you stating that. But thank you so much, Stephanie, for being able to talk to me and tell me your story. I hope it was an eye opening for you as well.
It was an experience to be able to talk about it, share. But thanks so much. Thanks for having me on here.